The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. And I pretty much read this book in 2 days. And I'm just going to talk a bit about it. So it says, yes, the greatest tool of the Mason is the mind. And the prisoner of materiality must raise their consciousness to gain liberation of the self and gain self-conscious expression. It says, the Master Mason becomes a worker on a higher plane than the one in which the ordinary builder is permitted to work. The Master Mason becomes the capstone of the universal temple, the pyramid, and matter is the tomb of living. The spirit cries for freedom, the right to be, to express and manifest its true place in the great plan of cosmic unfoldment. So it starts talking about the kind of principles, or well, Manly P. Hall, the author, he starts talking about the kind of principles that are essential to following the craft. And this is something that, as you know, interests me, and I have kind of studied the 8 pillars and things like that, and so there are specific principles that a craftsman, like a mason, must follow. And this is also interesting to me because I felt like I was prepared in this way before I had my initiation, but I was not aware that I was being prepared. Hi. So it says through purification, knowledge and service to your fellow man, you will unfold mystic properties, building a better and more perfect body, so that the higher self, which is your soul, secures even greater manifestation. And I think manifestation is a side effect of the initiations and kind of the preparation, because you're basically toning your soul by applying these principles. So the 3 things are thought, emotion and action, and they're basically the triangle. And it's kind of like something else I came across this week, which was the 3 monkeys, which is see no evil, like see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, but there's also do no evil as well. It says that these are 3 properties of thought, emotion and action, and they can either liberate your soul to the maximum, or they can put you in the deepest pits of hell. And it depends on all how you use them. And so the Mason tries to express himself through constructive thought, constructive emotion and taking constructive action, which liberates not only yourself but other people. Bodies are, which in their crystallized states are incapable of giving opportunities, become capable of giving opportunities when those 3 principles are engaged properly. What kind of a witch? I'm more of an occultist magician than a witch, but I call myself a witch because it's a term that people understand, I think, more than a magician. So, but basically I try to live magically, and I was talking today and sort of discussing with my husband why I came to witchcraft, and I said I kind of got fed up of the materialism and the superficiality of the fashion world, and it just felt very meaningless to me. And I think I finally reached the point where I felt like life should be magical, not just pedestrian and kind of meaningless. and I wanted to access something deeper and get back to magic. And I feel like life is so precious that it should be magical, and people should live in a magical way. And I feel like I'm missing out if I don't, basically. And so, yeah, the triangle of constructive thought, emotion, and action. If this is perverted, like perverted to evil thought, negative emotion, and evil action, these three things are the murderers of the God force in the self. And so the higher mind can kind of only be accessed by a higher understanding and windows of consciousness that come from purifying these three things, including the body. I think it's the body, the mind, and the soul have to be purified to become like a temple for the illumination to happen. So it then talks about King Solomon, and if you've been following me, I talk about Solomon's temple a lot. King Solomon's temple, and King Solomon knew about magic before Christ, and I think the tablets of Moses were written quite a significant amount of time before Christ, and then they were placed into King Solomon's temple, I think, if I remember rightly. So it says King Solomon actually means Sol Un, which is the power of mind. And it says when mind becomes perverted, it becomes a destroyer who tears down with the very powers that nourish and build. So it's the same power, it's how you use it. It can either nourish and build your soul and other people's souls, or it can become perverted and destroy your own soul and other people's souls. And it says the right application of thought when seeking the answer to cosmic problems of destiny liberates man's spirit, which soars above the concrete with its dreams and ideals. And when man pushes back the darkness with reason and logic, the builder is liberated from his dungeon and the light pours in. This light allows him to seek more clearly the mystery of creation and find with greater certainty his place in the great plan. For as man unfolds his bodies, he gains talents with which he can explore the mysteries and search for the hidden workings of the divine. And one thing that happened to me straight after my initiation was I gained talents that I hadn't had before, or at least it unlocked them. I had some knowledge of these things, but that it kind of supercharged them. And for example, my mum taught me piano from when I was a very small child, and so I'd learned some piano, but having the occult initiation made my artistry and musicianship 100 times better than what it had been before. I literally, that talent came to the fore, along with other talents too, and so it's a very strange thing. It's a very powerful thing to have one of those initiations, and but this book is all about self-initiation, a lot of it, and it's all about initiating yourself, which is quite good because it makes it available to the general public, I suppose. But I have read other books that say that no one can reach the light alone, and I think it might even say it in this book, I'm not sure, but sometimes I think that it's very hard to kind of unfold your own psyche. There are things that glorify the Masonic builder, and those are higher ideals, spiritual concepts, altruistic, philanthropic, education applications of thought, for they give the power of expression, and those who can express themselves are free. again, it talks about thought and the application of thought being towards those higher ideals of the self. Like, I would consider myself an idealist. I always have a dream that one day the world's going to be healed, we'll stop using plastics, we'll clean up the oceans and look after the wildlife like the people were meant to be. Whether we'll ever get there, I don't know. But I think that it's very important to be altruistic. I practice all these ideals in my business. Philanthropic and educative. I'm very interested in education and sharing that education with other people. It says that the lost key of the Apprentice Mason, which is the first degree, is service, which is choosing his life's work. And this is not an easy task to think about or to undertake, because you've got to kind of decide what it is that you're going to do that lines up with those very deep higher ideals in yourself. And the only person you can hold anything up to really is yourself at the end of the day. And I've actually let go of jobs before that have been perfectly fine, willing to pay me money, you know, because they weren't either growing me or they weren't contributing to what I would consider a positive end, or even maybe they weren't even doing their business in a way that I agreed with. So I think it's quite important to be principled in your business, because that reflects back in your happiness. And like, if you feel like you're doing the right thing, it's easier to be happy than if you feel like you're contributing to something that you don't agree with. And so yeah, the lost key of the Apprentice Mason is service to your fellow man, and choosing your life's work based upon your higher ideals. And this is to do something, act, and express yourself in some way, constructively if possible, but destructively rather than not at all. So it is very like an open-ended kind of experimentation phase, the Apprentice Mason, where you get to try out things and try to express yourself in the world, and then learn from what that's taught you. Well, thank you, Tony. And it says, with his ideals, he must beautify all that he comes into contact with, which totally appeals to me because I've got a Libra moon. So there's a little man in our village that goes around picking up all the litter, and I saw him today, and he never says a word to anyone. He's such a strange little guy, but I just feel like he's doing a really good thing. And I saw him picking up the litter, and I just said to him, "Good job, you're doing a really good job, thank you." And he didn't say anything, he just sort of humbly carried on doing it, and I almost thought, I wonder if he's a Mason. So, but literally the whole village has become litter free thanks to this one little old guy who's doing this thing out of the basically good of his heart, just to clean up the village and make it nicer for other people. Trash troll. It says so it's important for the Mason to multiply his benevolence to his fellow creatures and to divide his means with those in need. And his means are not necessarily kind of like giving money to other people. That's part of it, but I think it's more in terms of charity and virtue. So, hi Mystic Diana, I'm going to reply to your email. I've been like off it all week, so I'm just getting back into the swing of things now. Hi Glasgow. So it kind of like outlines what the apprentice should study, and it says the apprentice must study five things. Anatomy, for the mystery of form which is capable of analysing. And one thing I was doing at university was studying geometry in plants and anatomy, and correlating it to the mysteries of time and space. And I was very interested in sort of philosophical artwork and things like that. because the people who were sort of bringing me up at the time were philosophers and witches, and I said I want to know the truth. It's the only thing that I want in life, and you know, I also want to know what time and space is, and that's it. So yeah, he must study the anatomy for the mystery of form, because this gives you an idea of how nature works. And if you look at the Hermetic principles as well, anatomy is a reflection of that. Like, you have the polarity, duality, rhythm, gender, that kind of thing. And number 2, he must realise that his body is the living temple of God and treat it accordingly. When he abuses or mistreats his body, he breaks sacred obligations, which he must keep before he can ever hope to understand the true mysteries of the craft. Breaking this pact with the higher life evolving in the self unfailingly invokes the retributive agencies of nature, which basically means that you cut yourself off from your spiritual development and the lessons that the craft is teaching you. And number 3, he must study the maintenance of the body through food, clothing, breathing and other necessities, which is probably exercise and things like that. It says those who eat moderately, dress improperly, and use only 1/3 of their lung capacity can never have the physical efficiency necessary for the fullest expression of higher life. I kind of would agree with that. Like, if you eat until you're too full, it dampens your spiritual power. It's good to feel light and to feel energized all the time, wherever possible. And so number 4 is he must grow physically and in the expression of concrete things. His human relationships must be idealized, and he must unfold all unselfish qualities and his fellow men living on the physical plane. So I think that's mainly in kind of like growing your human relationships, you will grow physically and also in the expression of concrete things, because your relationships become opportunities, and that becomes like an opportunity to create. You might collaborate with people and things like that. And then number 5, he must seek to round off all inequalities by balancing his mental and physical bodies through the application on study of the several liberal arts and sciences. Now, this is like a really old, arcane, traditional Masonic thing that a lot of Masons don't actually do today, or like people have forgotten. But the 7 arts and sciences are grammar, rhetoric, logic, geometry, arithmetic, music, and astronomy, and that was considered a complete education in the ancient times. And it says until he's a master of these on the highest plane of his being, he can't hope to spiritually attract to himself the life-giving ray of the fellow craft. And those who allow social position, financial or selfish ideals to lead them have automatically separated themselves from the craft. Masons are evolved through self-conscious effort to live up to the highest ideals in themselves. Their lives are the sign of their rank, and their lives are greater by far than any visible or tangible credential that they might have, including lapel pins or, I think I've got a Freemason's necklace, sort of with it. It's actually a brooch, and I think that is the third degree Mason's brooch. So number 2, the second degree is the fellow craftsman, and the second fellow craftsman lost key to their grade is the mastery of their emotion. This is a pretty difficult thing to do. I mean, when I was initiated, I got thrown right in the deep end. I was given a hermetic initiation, and I'm having to kind of go back over the steps now, because it was basically a death initiation that I had, and the guy who initiated me died about a week after he initiated me, or a couple of weeks after he initiated me, and he gave me that initiation as his death wish, for me to kind of follow on in his steps. And so I'm having to go back through the Masonic steps to calibrate myself to those principles, which I want to do because I feel like I have become more in tune with like my soul self and my heart self, and by not following the keys to the craft, it becomes very difficult to kind of continue that level of illumination in your life. Yeah, that's really interesting. So the fellow craftsman lost key is the mastery of emotion. This places the energy of the universe at their disposal. Men can only be entrusted with great power by proving their ability to use it constructively and selflessly. The key is the proper application of the dynamo of the living power. Only then has he learned to master his craft, and the seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands. Incessant vigilance of thought, desire and action is a necessity in the fellow craftsman degree. And the fellow craftsman degree is one of emotional transmutation, and this is alchemy. Wow. That's really interesting, Deanna. We should talk about it, because sounds like you've been through something similar to me. And so yeah, we're getting into alchemy with the second degree, and really the master alchemist is the one who transmutes all his emotions, is able to transmute an emotion at will. He can go from hate to complete love in a second, just like clicking a finger, purely by his will, even in trying circumstances. And of course that's a desirable facet, and it kind of creates or lessens suffering in life to a large degree. And so that it says that the hand that slayed must now lift the fallen, while the lips that cursed must be taught to pray. And the compass points, the heart and the mind, which the compass points of the Freemason's compass, the heart and the mind, are now liberated from the square underneath, which is used to measure matter and form. Oh no. I think you're probably like a natural magician, Tiana. It says the fellow craft degree is to reach the point of poise and balance, secured between the extremes. Deanna, you'd know all about this because it's the grey pillar exercise. And along with the mastery of self-expression, the key words are compassion, poise and transmutation. The elemental fire is transmuted into spiritual light, the dynamo of the human life force. The heart becomes the centre of this activity, and constructive emotions should be brought out and emphasised. So that's being very conscious of your constructive thoughts and emotions, and instead of trying to maybe bat the negative ones away, it's emphasising the positive ones instead. Because as you know, what you kind of push away and you repress comes back stronger, if you've ever tried doing that. So